Dr. Michelle Marie. If you're on social media, you've seen her work. If you haven't, well, you're going to hear about it now. And she has a unique history in the military. I think she might root for both the Army and the Navy in December. I'm not sure. We'll have to ask her. So, Dr. Michelle Marie, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I don't know if I appreciate all branches, but I'm an Army girl all the way.
Yeah. Oh, I was so happy to hear that. But you do. We have to disclose here. You spent some time with both. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the first enlistment. And I always ask the origin story of our veterans. You know what led to the first enlistment, and then we'll have to figure out the second part.
So, my story on why I joined the Army is probably unlike most people. I have a brother who he's an older brother. He actually was in the military himself, and he's 2 years older than me. When he was just before his 20th birthday, he unfortunately passed away. And he was so passionate about serving his country. He was passionate about what he was doing in the military. And I had a really rough time for a couple of years after he passed away. I ended up dropping out of high school and moved across state lines and tried to figure my life out. And when I realized that I couldn't figure out what the heck I was doing, I was like, what am I going to do? And I also started thinking about the day before he passed away. He had actually come home on leave and was sitting down chatting with me. And he knew I was struggling with some things in school, and he made me promise that if I didn't do anything else, that I would at least graduate high school. And when I made that promise to him, I didn't know that the next day he was, going to another place. And so I had some challenging things happen over that next 6 to 9 months after he passed away. Ended up leaving high school and getting out or moving across the state lines. And when I, kind of realized that my life wasn't going anywhere, I started thinking back on that promise. And I was like, you know what? I broke that promise and I need to do something to, fulfill that promise in a way that I know would matter to him. And so I walked to the recruiter station and I said, I want to join the Army today. And that's what happened. They didn't have to sell me. I knew I wanted to join.
They didn't even have to punch a clock or take it. They just said, "Oh, we got one."
Yeah, they didn't have to lie to me. I was already sold.
Right. So that's incredible and powerful. What was your first MOS? What was the first stint in the service like?
So when I joined, they hadn't revamped everything. So I was a 71 Lima, aka administrative assistant. Over the years, they kind of bundled everything together. I don't know how familiar you are or how long it's been since you looked at a lot of the MOSs and stuff like that. But back in, I want to say it was 2006, 2007, they started bundling everything together into one. So I became what is known as 42 Alpha, which is a human resource specialist. And that is the majority of what I did when I was in the military, except for my deployment, which was a fun experience.
Funny how MOSs don't seem to translate when they need to fill a slot somewhere else. Yeah.
Exactly. During my deployment, actually, I'll say before my deployment, because originally I had joined as a reservist. After my deployment, I transitioned into the Active Guard Reserve program. But my deployment was during the period where I was a reservist. And one day I was notified that I was going to be involuntarily reclassified to an 88 Mike.
Oh, geez.
88 so Mikes. Imagine a little admin person, a tiny little 120-pound admin girl being told she's going to go drive trucks.
5 tons, deuce and half.
Fuel trucks nonetheless in Iraq. Yeah, that was fun.
Oh my gosh! Now you're in my sector. That was where a lot of my my colleagues and I were, yeah, oh my gosh.
And we were actually, the company I was with was a petroleum supply company. So we were transporting fuel from base to base in Iraq. That was our mission. And because we were typically a petroleum supply unit, those of us that were transferring fuel had to do tanker to tanker transfers. So I had to learn all that too.
Yeah.
That was fun.
And that was very dangerous as well. You probably, I don't know what they called it when you were in, but we used to call it the rhino runs when we were going from base to base.
Yeah.
And a slow moving vehicle full of fuel. I mean, that's intense.
Average speed was about 35 to 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. Jeez. That's something.
Yeah.
So
No.
it wasn't about how fast you could type anymore. It was about how.
Exactly.
Oh,
It went from about 35 words per minute to 10 miles per hour.
good Lord. Oh man. All right. Well, typical Army. I won't even get off on that particular soapbox. So okay, so you obviously traveled a lot with the Army. Now explain the flip side of, is it because the Army lost the Army Navy game 10 years in a row? What led for the change there?
So no, it was getting annoying that we kept losing, but I essentially, after about 10 years in, I just was at a point where I was overwhelmed. I was tired. I was like, I just was struggling mentally with a lot of things. With the Army life, I had family all over the place, but where I was stationed, I had no family whatsoever. So there was that. On top of that, I had some medical things, some related to my deployment and some just related to being in the service in general. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up having 2 surgeries on my arm, one of which pretty much made it to where I would be on a permanent profile for my arm forever, and I wasn't deployable anymore. And I had the option: do I want to fight to stay in, or do I want to let them, go through the process and determine whether I need to be put out or not? And I just kind of decided I'm not going to fight it. Whatever the system wants to do, the system's going to do. And I ended up getting out, and that was actually January 2013. So it's been just over 10 years of getting out. Yeah.
Wow, that's something.
Yep.
And then I guess walk us through that transition and what you did next after that.
So I will be completely honest, because that's the purpose of this, right? So I had talked to a number of people as I was getting out, and everybody was so optimistic, like, oh yeah, there's all these government jobs, you can do this, you can do that, you have a great resume that you can transfer over your skill set into the civilian world, and all these things. And I was like, okay, yes, like I'm going to apply for all this stuff. Like I'm going to get an amazing job. I know that, I'm going to be still making really good money. I was so positive on everything. I had transition leave, or, leave left on the books. So I basically, between the holidays and the leave that I had left on the books, I was essentially on leave for a month and a half after, or in my ending period. I still, by the time I was technically discharged, had not found a job. So I was forced on unemployment for a month and a half. Mm-hmm. I finally found a job after, around that month and a half time frame, with a temp agency, making barely $30,000 a year, with a home and a child.
Right.
And I did not know what to do with myself. I could have technically stayed on unemployment. I was only making about $20 to $30 more a week working than I was on unemployment, but I couldn't just sit at home all day and it was driving me crazy sitting at home all day. So
sure.
I worked my way up in that company, got permanent after like a year, I think a little more than a year, and stayed there for about 2 years. In the process of that, I went through some really tough financial things, because you can imagine, if you have a home and you have a child, making barely $30,000 a year is not a lot of money. So I had to walk through a short sale process on my house, which we'll probably get into later on. A lot of that is why I do what I do now.
Sure.
Uh, it was a really emotionally draining time going through that financial crisis. I thought I was going to be homeless. I had to go to a food bank. It was really, really tough. I mean, just taking that mindset of somebody who's like, I know what I'm doing. I'm strong. I'm capable. I'm a soldier, right?
Right.
I'm independent, to literally being left in the hands of everybody else, having to help me figure stuff out because I didn't know what to do. In the midst of just trying to maintain so that I didn't lose the job that I did have. So finally kind of worked through all of that. And after about 3 years since getting out of the military, finally landed a government job with the Navy.
That's how it goes. Okay, so now I get the Navy.
So I now work as a civilian for the Navy. But in order for me to take that job, I had to take a $50 a month pay cut.
Hmm.
And it was a hard choice because
Yeah.
I was already struggling financially. But I knew if I just get in there and I do what I'm good at, that I can work my way up.
Yeah.
And now it's been about 7.5 years, and I've definitely worked my way up tremendously. I'm now, doubled my income, more than doubled my income from when I started. So, yeah.
That's fantastic, and then it just shows you were resilient. You took a few beatings. You had to go through a dark chapter there, obviously, but look at what you've learned in the process.
Yeah.
And I love how you learned, and now you're sharing what you've learned. I love that.
Yeah.
A lot of comments and things. We'll get into that, I'm sure, in a minute. But if I could ask one question before we get into the the current time here, what between your time in the Army and your deployments and you went from a reclassification of the MLS to 88 Mike. Oh boy, different groups of folks, different groups of leaders. Was there ever one particular person, whether it be someone in your platoon or a leader, or was there one particular lesson through the time in the Army that really it became a life lesson instead of just something you learned that day? Was there something you carry with you now from those years?
So there's actually two people I can think of, and the reason why I say two is because it was my company commander and my first sergeant of the first unit from when I went AGR. So for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what AGR is, that you're not familiar with the military, it's active guard reserve. So you're a reservist that's activated. You're on active duty, but you work for reserve centers. So you're doing the full time Monday through Friday, but also the weekends or the 1 weekend a month system as well. So my company commander happened to also be AGR, and then we had a reservist first sergeant, and he came on orders for about 6 months or so to help with some things. So I was the main admin. He actually, the company company commander used to joke and call me Radar. If you are familiar with MASH, you'll know what that means. If not, just go look up Radar from MASH. That's what he used to call me. He actually printed off a picture of Radar and posted and taped it on my door. And like it was the two of them, like I was the main admin, and anytime either one of them needed anything, it was like Lappin, 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 Lappin. I'm like, okay, I'm coming, and like they really instilled discipline in me in a way that was enhanced from what I learned in basic training, because that's another type of discipline. Right. Two things stand out to me. My company commander used to say all the time, when he asked a question from somebody and they would respond, and if you're not really clear on, you believe you know the answer, but you're not 100%, sure, you'll say something like, well, I believe, right? And so he would always say, I believe is not a method. I believe is not a method.
I believe
And
it's
so what
not a
that
method. Love it.
yeah, and what that instilled in me is be certain on what you're saying. If you're not certain, find out, or at least just admit that. Just say, you know what, I'm not 100% certain. This is what I do recall, but let me be certain, and I will get back to you, right? And then like it made me more diligent, right? And then he was very motivating on top of that. And then the first sergeant that I had, he he noticed that I can be a very overly kind person. And in the military, that doesn't usually go over very well. We want people to be kind, but it doesn't usually go over well. So I would apologize about everything. And he would be like, stop apologizing for things. Stop apologizing for things. And it helped me to realize that, I was apologizing for stuff because I felt like I was upsetting somebody or something like that. I don't even know really where it came from. But it just helped me to learn things about myself and also helped me to be more confident in myself. If you're sitting there apologizing for things all the time, it might, you might not be as confident as you think you are. And that's essentially what it was for me. So just kind of between those things specifically, and then a few other things, just kind of helped to shape the beginning stages of me being a leader. So.
Oh, that's great. It's fantastic. It's nice that you had a good cadre there and a good support to
Yeah.
sharpen the sword, as they say, right?
Mhm.
Well, great. And then I guess we have to figure out now the next fun part here is, when did the light bulb go on that you said, hey, I got all this knowledge now. I'm learning all these great things. I can help people with this information. How did that happen? And I guess for the audience that isn't familiar with you yet, maybe this is their first time hearing you speak, let them know all the ways that they can learn from you.
Yeah, so for context, for anyone who hasn't heard of me or seen my stuff before, I'm actually a wealth coach, and I deal with all things personal financial management and wealth building. And what the light bulb moment was for me is that, as I said earlier, I had went through a really tough time financially, and I had to learn to do some things differently. And as I was learning these new things, I had people that saw what I had went through, people that I talked to in the process of the financial crisis that I walked through, right? And then they saw how I was overcoming it. I was very open and honest with people about what I was doing, the things that I was doing to change my behaviors, to change my lifestyle, and be able to overcome that financial crisis and walk out of it. And the more that I did that, people started reaching out to me and asking me questions. Hey, well, what are your thoughts on this? I'm actually struggling with budgeting, and I'm not really sure what approach to take. What are your suggestions? And I started sitting down with a couple of friends and actually helping them do their budgets. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I've never felt so easy before. Like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, it's so clear now. And like they would, have their money would be all over the place, and they're like, I don't know how. They would feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they didn't know how to manage anything. They're like, I feel like I have no money. And then after sitting down with me and going through stuff and helping them organize everything, they're like, how did you make that work? Most of the time they had money left over, and they're like, I'm sorry, where did that money come from? I'm like, it was
Right.
there. It was there. You just had to re-strategize it. That's all. And they just didn't know how to do that. And it's because we're not taught that things. We're not taught that in school. We're not taught that growing up. And we certainly are not taught that in the military, even though we should. But that's a whole nother soapbox. So I had at least 3 or 4 people that I was doing that with that looked at me, and just every single one of them were like, why aren't you doing this as a business? And I was like, I don't know. I've never thought about doing it as a business. And lo and behold, right around that same time frame, another friend of mine was starting her own business as a business coach for startups. And she invited me to the table, and we birthed this business today, and that was a little over 4 years ago. This is the beginning of year 5 for me on this. So
Yeah,
yeah.
great. And like the old saying goes, you built it and they come. I mean, I watch all these folks following you, and that's how we got connected. We got connected on social media.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of similar interests and things, and of course, both being veterans. And like you mentioned, and with people that you knew, here's people that you don't know that are thanking you online because you solved a huge problem that they couldn't overcome. Their stress level was high. Maybe they were embarrassed, or maybe they were just they didn't want to look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something you said, one of your videos, something inspired them and helped them get back on track. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. That's got to be a good feeling to do that during the day and have that type of response.
It really is. I mean, there's some days where I'm like, it's crickets, and I'm like, why? What is this doing? Like, is this helping anybody? And then all of a sudden, I'll get a message from somebody that they're like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, like, this is a quick update. Somebody that I hardly ever talk to, isn't a client, will just randomly message me and give me an update on what they're doing in their life financially and how listening to the guidance that I have has helped them. And I'm just like, thank you. Thank you. Even if you're not a client, the fact that anything that I share is helping you, because my biggest passion in this is I don't ever want to hear or see somebody in the situation that I was in. It was the worst situation. Crazy to say it, but it was worse than my deployment. It was worse than my deployment. I do not ever want to walk through that again. And I don't want to see anybody else walk through that. I really don't. And so that is the biggest passion and why I am doing what I'm doing now is because I don't want to see anybody else walk through that. So
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. So where can folks? I mean, you have a lot of different platforms, but what's your preferred method of communicating with people, and how you're more likely to see folks that reach out to you and want to learn more? What's the best website or platform that you'd recommend there?
So the easiest thing would probably be Instagram. So I'm at dr.michelleMarie on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, same thing, dr.michelleMarie on Facebook. And if you happen to have LinkedIn, you can look for Dr. Michelle Marie Lappin on LinkedIn. I am also on TikTok and Twitter. I don't get on there as much, but I am on there. Same handle at dr.michelleMarie. I tried to keep it simple for everybody.
Yeah, I, I,
And
I get overwhelmed with all these, but
it really is. And I'm even on Clubhouse.
what was the last one?
Clubhouse.
Oh, I don't even know that one.
Clubhouse. It's an audio only app. Essentially, it's like podcasting, but it's live.
Oh, okay, like a podcast. Okay,
Stations.
gotcha.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, good. All right, so we'll make sure when we air, we do archive things online, so we'll make sure we'll have some links there so people can find you. We'll put your contact in our little directory on our website as well. And then I do want to ask you a fun little question. I always enjoy this. I always ask folks if you could time travel and go back to talk to your younger self, before you join the army, perhaps. What would the message be? Either encouragements or warnings, what have you. I don't. It doesn't matter. What would you say to your younger self before you embarked on this journey that took you through, two branches, at least two continents, and then all these people that you're interacting with today? What would be the message to the young Michelle there?
I'll word it this way. Breathe and pick and choose your battles.
Hmm.
And when I say pick and choose your battles, sometimes that means that it's, just close your mouth, smile and nod. Maybe not smile because some people don't like that, but sometimes it's just that, yes, sir, yes, sergeant, Roger, got it, whatever. And then sometimes you actually have to speak up and stand your ground, or speak up for your soldiers, things like that. There are times when it's appropriate to address the issue, and doing it correctly. I personally really, really struggled with those two things. I would hold things in a lot, and then I would get overwhelmed, and then it would come out in a way that wasn't the most respectful way. Um, so that is not the best approach. If I didn't struggle with those types of things when I was in the military, I probably would have stayed in longer. Outside of that, I would say the system of the military is built the way it is for a reason. It is 100% built the way it is for a reason. I know for a fact that I am who I am today. I am diligent, I am resourceful, I am determined, I am all those things and more because of what I learned in the military. So don't take for granted the system of the military. It is frustrating at times. You may not always understand it, but there is purpose behind it. And when you look back, you'll see I have these skill sets that people appreciate and that I appreciate because of what I was taught and what I learned when I was in the military.
Well said. And don't apologize. I like that. Don't apologize. I like that. Yeah, the military certainly has refined its SOP, regardless of who's in and out of it. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, this is great. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy, but this was fun. I'm glad we had a chance to connect. And we'll have this online. Like I said, we'll have some links as well. And what a journey. And you're just getting started. I mean, you're just starting. I mean, you said it's only been 5 years or so on this particular business. So I'd like to catch up again. We'll see where things are going. But folks, I've been enjoying this talk. I hope you have as well. Sitting here with Dr. Michelle Marie. You can find her pretty much everywhere, all over social media. And it's been a real pleasure. And I want to thank you, of course, for your service. I want to thank your family for their service and sacrifice. And I want to thank you for your time. And I guess I'll just say, go Army.
Yes, go Army. Always go Army.
Go Army.
Good job with the Navy, but go Army.
Navy, have a seat. Army, hit it. Take it down the field. Yeah. All right, folks. In honor of Dr. Michelle Marie, I'm going to play this fun little song here, and then we'll get right back after a quick message from one of our friends. Stand by.